TrueStory Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
TrueStory Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. Mari Roth eased her rental car down the long, winding lane that led to Prescott Manor, the sprawling white-columned estate perched atop a gentle hill overlooking Salem Hills. The autumn sunlight, muted by drifting clouds, cast mottled shadows across the gravel drive, illuminating the golden and russet leaves that fluttered in the crisp breeze. Mari's heart pounded in her chest, equal parts anticipation and dread. Today was her first formal afternoon at the Prescott family's handsomely appointed library, a gathering that would test her resolve, her patience, and, above all, her willingness to endure the unrelenting scrutiny of her formidable mother-in-law, Gwendolyn Prescott. Mari glanced at her reflection in the rear-view mirror. She straightened the collar of her tailored navy blazer, smoothed an errant strand of dark hair behind her ear, and offered herself a small, steadying smile. At 28, she was no naive ingenue fresh off the wedding march. She held a degree in marketing, had spent 5 years building a successful career in Portland's creative sector, and possessed an inner strength born of independence. Yet stepping into the Prescott world felt less like joining a family and more like walking a tightrope strung above a courtyard of watchful hawks. As Mari gathered her purse and stepped onto the drive's gravel path, her mother, Imogen Roth, appeared at her side. Clad in a comfortable cashmere shawl and well-worn jeans, Imogen gave Mari a reassuring hug. "You'll do fine, sweetheart," she whispered, pressing Mari's hand. "Just be yourself." Mari nodded, though "just be yourself" felt almost perilous amid the tightly measured expectations of the Prescott clan. Gwendolyn Prescott was known throughout Salem Hills as a matriarch of rare resolve, a woman of impeccable breeding, sterling social standing, and a single-minded focus on preserving her family's legacy. Behind those steely blue eyes lay decades of strategic decisions, all aimed at ensuring the Prescott name would endure, carried on through each male generation. The front door of the manor swung open before Mari could raise her knocker. A tall butler in a charcoal tailcoat bowed and announced, "Ms. Roth, Lady Prescott awaits you in the drawing room." Mari allowed herself a calming breath as she entered the grand foyer, her shoes clicking softly on the marble floor that gleamed faintly beneath the chandelier's warm glow. Family portraits, stormy Pacific Coast scenes, ancestors in 19th century finery lined the walls, their subjects' gazes seeming to track her progress. She felt watched, measured, analyzed at every step. In the drawing room, Gwendolyn Prescott sat behind a carved mahogany desk laden with ledgers and teacups. Her posture was erect, her tailored cream suit immaculate, her hair the precise grace of silver waves. She motioned for Mari to sit on an upholstered settee across from her. The air smelled faintly of Earl Grey and polished oak. "Marisol," Gwendolyn began, her tone courteous but frosty. "You know why I asked you here?" Mari nodded, voice measured. "Yes, Lady Prescott." "Good," Gwendolyn said, folding her hands. "By now you must understand the importance of an heir. The Roth bloodline is a fine thing, of course, but it is through the male Prescott descendants that the estate, the vineyard, and our philanthropic foundations will persist." Mari closed her eyes briefly, recalling her nights spent alone in their modest suburban home, wrestling with the news that her fertility treatments had yielded no pregnancy so far. "I am aware," she answered softly. "Ashton and I have discussed it thoroughly, and we are pursuing every medical option available." Gwendolyn's lips curved into a thin, approving smile, approval tempered by something harder. "I appreciate your candor, but medicine can take some time. Meanwhile, you will attend to your duties here." She tapped a slim ledger. "I have arranged for you to oversee the autumn harvest on Thursday and the charity luncheon setup on Saturday. If I may remind you, the Prescott women have always contributed labor as a gesture of good faith." Mari inhaled and released. Of course. I'll be there. Excellent. Gwendolyn leaned forward, gaze sharpening. I trust you will learn from your sister-in-law, Mrs. Sophia Prescott. She has been a model of grace under pressure, though she, too, has yet to present us with a grandson. I insist you observe her, and perhaps take notes. A flush rose to Mari's cheeks. Sophia Prescott was both elegant and poised, but also rumored to be calculating in her social maneuverings. Mari forced herself to smile. I will gladly spend time with her. Gwendolyn's next words landed like a velvet-clad hammer. Remember, we are all invested in maintaining the family's legacy. Your role, precious as it is, must always align with that mission. She rose, signaling the end of the audience. Mari stood, bowed her head, and exited the room, knees momentarily weak. By the time she reached the wide staircase, she leaned against the polished banister, gulping fresh air. She had a sinking sense that this afternoon's lesson would remain with her far longer than any speech at work ever did. Over the next hour, Mari met Sophia Prescott, coiffed in a sleek auburn bob, clad in a pale silk blouse. Sophia greeted her with a measured warmth, offering guidance on orchard schedules and estate protocols. We all face the same expectations, Mari, Sophia whispered as they strolled past rows of apple trees. But take heart, there are ways to shine even under the watchful eye of Gwendolyn.
Mari nodded,
Grateful for Sophia's partnership even as her mind raced with unease. Later, in the expansive kitchen, Mari donned harvest gloves and joined a small cadre of Prescott women, sipping herbal tea as they processed produce for a local food bank. Gwendolyn, observing from the window, seemed satisfied that her new daughter-in-law was acclimating correctly, even if the ticking clock of lineage still loomed ominously over all. By late afternoon, Mari's arms ached pleasantly, and a flicker of pride warmed her chest. She had worked alongside women who traced their bloodlines back centuries, yet showed a genuine commitment to community. For a moment, Mari glimpsed a side of Prescott life that went beyond expectations of heirs and inheritance. When she finally returned to the library, Gwendolyn awaited her with an unreadable expression.
Well?
She asked. Mari squared her shoulders, meeting those icy blue eyes. The harvest went smoothly, Lady Prescott. The women were generous with their expertise. I believe the luncheon setup on Saturday will be just as successful. Gwendolyn inclined her head, lips curving slightly. You've done well today. Continue to apply yourself. And perhaps Ashton and I will have reasons to celebrate soon. Mari managed a polite smile, though her heart tightened at the implied caveat. She curtsied and retreated to the foyer, where the butler awaited. As she stepped back into the fading daylight, Mari drew in a lungful of cool air. Salem Hill's rolling acreage and distant forested ridges offered a momentary balm. She gathered her bag, squared her shoulders, and resolved silently. Yes, she would learn every nuance of Prescott expectations, but she would also hold fast to her own worth, her own dreams. No whispered pressure, no veiled command could strip her of that resolve. And so, with the Manor's silhouette behind her and the first chill of evening on her cheeks, Mari Roth descended the drive, preparing to face whatever legacy demands awaited her tomorrow. By the time the first November chill drifted into Portland, Mari Roth had come to know the echo of silence that filled her two-bedroom condo each morning. She rose at dawn, switched on the kettle, and poured herself a cup of Earl Grey before slipping quietly into her navy blazer and heading out to the waiting buzz of the city. Ashton Vale's side of the bed remained cold, the sheets uncreased, proof he had already slipped away on another early business trip. Their wedding bands sat on mismatched ceramic dishes by the bedside, tokens of a promise that now felt fraying around the edges. Ashton's calendar was an endless parade of airport shuttles and client lunches. Mari's, a labyrinth of doctor appointments, fertility specialists, and marketing deadlines. They had once shared brunch on lazy Sundays, laughing over buttery croissants and planning weekend getaways.
Now.
Her messages to him. Breakfast waiting. Mari clicked the front door shut behind her before he even had a chance to stir. On the train, she clutched her thermos, staring out at gray rooftops as early commuters brushed past, absorbed in their own routines. She wondered how many of them rode in silence too, carrying unspoken burdens like she did. At the office, Mari buried herself in campaign briefs. A rebrand for a local winery, a digital rollout for a downtown cafe chain. Her colleagues admired her attention to detail, her gift for weaving stories that sold experiences rather than products. Yet each compliment felt a little hollow, drifting past her mind like autumn leaves blown off course. Her real story, the one that had nothing to do with social media metrics or color palettes, was about blood work results, ovulation calendars, and the gnawing ache of yet another negative pregnancy test. By mid-afternoon, Mari found herself in the waiting room of North Shore Women's Clinic. The pale leather chairs formed a neat semicircle around a coffee table stacked with medical brochures. She tapped her fingers on the armrest, resisting the habit of checking her phone for Ashton's text. There it was again, no messages. The receptionist's gentle call startled her back to reality. Mari Roth? Here, she said, standing. She followed Dr. Nguyen into the ultrasound room, letting the warmth of the gel and the rhythmic hum of the machine wash over her. The doctor's brow furrowed as she adjusted the controls. All looks technically normal, Dr. Nguyen said at last. Your ovaries are healthy. There's no sign of endometriosis or cysts. Sometimes, she paused, offering a kind smile, it simply takes more time or requires different approaches. Have you and Ashton discussed next steps?
Mari swallowed. Yes.
We're exploring IUI next month, along with continuing the supplements. And she hesitated, I've been tracking cycles diligently. That's good, Dr. Nguyen said. Keep a calm mindset as best you can. Stress can sometimes interfere. We'll reconvene after your upcoming injection cycle. Thank you, Mari whispered, gathering her coat. She forced her shoulders back before tapping out a brief voicemail. Ashton, appointment done. Everything's normal. We'll revisit next steps soon. Love you. No reply. On her drive home, raindrops spattered the windshield as she replayed the doctor's words. Everything's technically normal, both a relief and an agony. She slowed at a traffic light, staring at her reflection in the gloom, eyes brimming with unspent tears, lips tight with resolve. She flicked on the windshield wipers, pressed forward. The elevator in their condo building chimed at the 4th floor. Mari stepped inside, hugged her briefcase to her chest, and exhaled when the doors closed. In the hallway, she paused at apartment 4B, the place she and Ashton had made their first home together. She turned the key and flicked on the living room lamp, illuminating the sleek sofa and framed photo of their wedding day, golden leaves swirling around them, vows whispered beneath an arbor of apple blossoms. Mari set her purse down and headed to the kitchen. She rummaged in the freezer for a pre-made entree, slid it into the microwave, and tacked 2 plates on the counter out of instinct. She poured herself a glass of water, then another cup of coffee, then checked her phone for the 10th time that afternoon. Still nothing from Ashton. At the small dining table, she sat facing the empty chair across from her. The microwave dinged, and she retrieved a steaming portion of chicken and vegetables. She took a tentative bite, comfortingly bland, and texted again. Dinner's ready. I'll eat here if you're tied up. Let me know if you'll be home. She put the phone down, spooned another bite, and stared into the half-empty glass of water, wondering if her reflection had grown older in the glass. Later that evening, the click of the front door startled her. Ashton strode in, rainwater beading on his navy trench coat. He removed his shoes and hung the coat on a hook before rounding the corner. Hey. His voice was apologetic, but fatigued. Sorry I'm late. Mari remained at the table. The worried line between her brows deepened. You missed dinner, she said flatly. I know. He sat down, grabbing the plate she'd set for him. I had to stay late for a client crisis. You know how it is. You know exactly what I'm talking about, she replied, voice low. We had an appointment. I thought you said you'd come. Ashton paused mid-bite, fork hovering. I'm sorry.
Mari.
I overslept, alarm didn't go off. I planned to go after work, but got sucked into meetings. We've both been exhausted, she admitted, though the words tasted bitter. It's just, I need you to show up. Not just here, she gestured around the apartment, but here. She touched her chest. He put down his fork and reached for her hand. I do care. I know I haven't been around enough. Let's look at our schedules. We'll make this work. Mari nodded, grateful for the gesture, but wary of the unspoken caveat. We need to follow through. I feel stuck doing this alone. Ashton swallowed. I'll adjust things. I promise. They finished dinner in silence, the gulf between them bridged for a moment by forced smiles and hopeful plans. But as Mari stood to wash the dishes, the echo of dripping water underscored the distance that still hovered between them. In the weeks that followed, Ashton canceled a business trip to Seattle so they could attend acupuncture and nutrition consultations together. They shared early morning brunches once more, laughter tentatively returning. Mari even felt a cautious optimism as she mixed supplements into yogurt, and Ashton learned to prepare her favorite spinach omelet. But just as hope blossomed, the demands of the Prescott Autumn Gala loomed large. Gwendolyn Prescott summoned Mari to oversee the heirloom pumpkin display at the charity event, scheduling volunteer shifts that conflicted with Mari's fertility treatment appointments. Mari lobbied to rearrange her calendar. Gwendolyn stood firm. Family duties come first, Gwendolyn said, cool as frost. Your role here is as vital as producing an heir. Mari sank her teeth into the pumpkin puree, not out of hunger, but frustration. Ashton offered to step in for one shift, only to be interrupted by an urgent call from his office. Mari watched him leave, lapel button undone, raincoat in hand. Once again, she found herself standing alone beneath the library's arched doorway at Prescott Manor, clutching a clipboard and a plastic safety vest. Her coffee had gone cold in her thermos.
Inside,
Gwendolyn circled the display tables, hands clasped behind her back, inspecting every squash and gourd as Mari darted from table to table, straightening rows, fixing signage. Sophia Prescott appeared at Mari's elbow, observing with a faint smile. These American heirlooms are quite popular, Sophia remarked. You have the right touch. Mari forced a grateful nod. Thank you. But, Sophia added, voice low, you're spreading yourself thin. You have your health appointments. I know, Mari interrupted. But this matters too. Sophia's eyes reflected understanding, and perhaps a shared weariness. The Prescotts have always prided ourselves on community. If you find yourself overwhelmed, seek help. Ashton might be able to cover one shift. He's in meetings, Mari lied, though Sophia caught the tremor in her voice. Thanks for the advice. That night, back in their condo, Mari confronted Ashton gently, pointing to a chart on her phone. My injection's scheduled for Thursday at 2. I can't miss it. He traced the date. Then I'll move the gala shift. I'll cover your Prescott duty. Mari blinked in surprise. You can do that? I can. He paused. I'm sorry I fought it. I want to help. A fragile smile touched her lips. Thank you. The next morning, Mari found a post-it on the kitchen island. Shift covered. You focus on you. Love, A. That small note, scrawled in Ashton's neat handwriting, made her heart ache with relief. For the first time in months, she felt seen. On Thursday, Mari arrived at the fertility clinic to find Ashton sitting in the waiting area, coffee in hand, sleeves rolled up. He rose, offering her a reassuring grin. They held hands through the blood draw, the ultrasound, the nervous chatter in the hallway. I'm here, Ashton murmured during their post-appointment debrief. I know I can't fix this, but I can face it with you. Mari leaned against him, letting the moment wash through her. That's all I ask. As they drove home through drizzling rain, Mari realized that while the path ahead remained uncertain, they had reclaimed something precious, their partnership. The shadows of empty chairs and unreturned messages had lessened. Each step toward each other was both a risk and a promise. For now, that fragile truce, built on honesty, shared fear, and a single sticky note, was enough to sustain Mari through another day of, well, a cold marriage thawing ever so slowly. By early December, the crisp Salem Hills air had turned bone-chilling, a perfect backdrop for the undercurrents of tension swirling through Prescott Manor. The grand estate, lavishly decorated in wreaths of evergreens and twinkling fairy lights for the holiday season, concealed more than just holiday cheer. Beneath its vaulted ceilings and polished mahogany surfaces, old rivalries and unspoken grudges festered, none more dangerous than the simmering envy that lay between the Prescott daughters-in-law. Sophia Prescott had always cut a striking figure at family gatherings. At 32, she was tall and elegant, her auburn hair coiffed in a sleek bob, eyes a cool hazel that assessed every corner of a room with calculating precision. She'd grown up in Brookstone's finest private schools, her accomplishments celebrated in society pages, debutante, volunteer philanthropist, local gallery trustee. Yet for all her accolades, Sophia harbored a private sting of inadequacy. 3 years into her marriage, she still had not produced a child. When Mari Roth arrived at the manor, Sophia had recognized in her a fresh rival, younger, accomplished in her own right, and, worst of all, already a darling of Gwendolyn Prescott. Mari's resilience, her easy rapport with the staff and local charities, was a direct contrast to Sophia's tightly governed social calendar. What Sophia saw as effortless warmth in Mari, she experienced as a spotlight on her own perceived shortcomings. Across the hall lived Lila Prescott, age 27, a gentle soul with soft brown curls and a background in education. Lila had once been a schoolteacher before giving up her career to manage domestic affairs after her wedding. She possessed none of Sophia's flair for social dominance, but in her quiet way, she exuded kindness that endeared her to everyone, that is, except for Sophia. On a frigid Monday evening, Gwendolyn Prescott convened the always anticipated holiday charitable soiree in the manor's ballroom. Guests arrived in sparkling gowns and tuxedos. A harpist played carols as waitstaff glided between galleries of hors d'oeuvres. Gwendolyn, resplendent in emerald satin, sat at the head of a long banquet table, overseeing every detail with steely grace. Mari and Sophia took seats at either end of the table, fittingly Sophia to the left, Mari to the right, and Lila settled quietly between two distant cousins, trying not to draw attention. As the first course was served, lobster bisque with a swirl of cognac cream, Sophia's breath came in shallow, rehearsed murmurs. She watched Mari laugh softly with Lila when a cousin cracked a corny holiday joke. Gwendolyn, seated center, nodded in approval at Mari's genteel posture, while Sophia's own smile felt curdled, thin. When the servant rolled out the champagne cart for toasts, Sophia downed her first flute in 3 measured sips, watching as Mari raised her glass to Gwendolyn, gratitude sparkling in her eyes. Jealousy and desperation collided in Sophia's chest. She thought of nights spent scrolling through fertility forums, injecting hopeful hormones only to find another negative result. In that moment, she decided, if she couldn't win with charm or charity, she would strike where Mari least expected it. A week later, the family convened again, this time for a winter solstice luncheon in the manor's cozy sunroom. A library set just beyond offered views of frost-laced rose bushes and a private skating pond. As guests mingled under the glow of low-hanging lanterns, Gwendolyn discreetly tasked Sophia and Lila with delivering holiday baked goods to the local children's hospital. It was a generous gesture, if somewhat theatrical, and Mari joined them with a thermos of hot cider. Together, the 3 women stepped into the family-chauffeured sedan, their breath clouding in the crisp air. Mari chatted warmly with Lila about the children they would visit. Lila offered her full attention, her soft voice brimming with excitement at the prospect of reading festive stories to young patients. Sophia, however, remained silent, eyes veering toward Mari with a practiced neutrality. Inside the children's hospital, they were met with bright murals and the laughter of kids in holiday pajamas. Mari knelt to distribute cupcakes and candies, cooing with toddlers. Lila read the Nutcracker to small clusters of wide-eyed 4-year-olds. Sophia, for her part, posed graciously for photos with social media coordinators. Her smile unwavering but her gaze flicking constantly to Mari's effortless rapport. On the ride back to Prescott Manor, Sophia saw her chance. Lila dozed lightly against her seat. Mari arranged the folded flyers on her lap. The chauffeur's partition muted the sound of the engine's hum. Sophia eased a small vial from her purse, labeled in tiny print as vitamin supplement, and slipped it into Mari's open cider thermos when Mari turned to check on Lila. Mari took her own sip first, then handed the thermos back to Sophia, who replaced the lid with a polite nod and a thank you. Mari did not see the vial slip from Sophia's silk glove. Shortly after their return, Gwendolyn held a private tea in the library, as custom dictated on the eve of the solstice. It was meant to celebrate the gathering of family. Instead, it would nearly cause a tragedy. Mari sipped the spiced cider thoughtfully while Gwendolyn lectured on the importance of unity and service. Lila sat close by, cradling her teacup. Sophia sat opposite Mari, a poised image of cordial composure. Moments later, Mari's cheeks flushed an alarming crimson. She set her cup aside, blinking rapidly. Gwendolyn reached out, alarm in her voice. "Mari, are you well?" Mari rose unsteadily. I'm fine," she managed, but her legs wobbled. She pressed a hand to her forehead, then sank lower, her vision swimming. Lila launched from her seat.
Mari.
"Wait, I've got you." Gwendolyn called for help. Servants poured in as Lila supported Mari to a settee, whispering, "Stay with me. Breathe." Sophia stood, face pale but carefully neutral, her heart pounding with the knowledge of what she had done. Doctors were summoned from the local clinic. Mari lay reclining, her pulse pounding erratically. Dr. Nguyen arrived within the hour. Concern etched on her face. Blood pressure readings followed, and Mari trembled as if chilled by a sudden storm. Gwendolyn clutched her hand, guilt and fear warring in her eyes. "What happened?" she demanded, her voice shaking. Lila knelt by Mari's side. She drank something off. I heard a rattle as she lifted the cup.
She didn't seem right.
The staff ushered Mari to a private consultation room behind the library. Dr. Nguyen examined the vial Sophia had discreetly slipped into Mari's drink when no one was looking. The pills inside were a potent sedative, enough to disable Mari for hours, possibly even endanger her life. Gwendolyn gasped, pale as the winter moon. Who would do this? Sophia watched through a cracked doorway as Dr. Nguyen tended to Mari. Her own heart hammered in her ears. She should have stopped herself, but the years of infertility had driven her to a desperate brink. She clenched her gloved hands, realizing the enormity of her crime. That evening, after Mari had been escorted home by Lila and a somber Dr. Nguyen, who insisted on staying until Mari stabilized, the manor sat unusually silent. Even the servants moved with hushed urgency. Gwendolyn paced the library's back corridor, her palms pressed to her temples. She summoned Sophia to her side. "Sophia," Gwendolyn's voice trembled. "This isn't like you. Why would you?" Sophia's composure cracked. She sank into a nearby armchair, head bowed. I'm sorry," she whispered, voice choked. "I never meant for her to get hurt. I wanted to prove I could secure my place here." Gwendolyn stared at her daughter-in-law, aghast. "You almost killed your sister-in-law. For what? Jealousy?" "I couldn't bear her ease," Sophia said, tears streaming unchecked. "The way she charmed you, Lila, everyone, while I was left empty-handed, mocked in my own home." Gwendolyn's face hardened. "This ends now. You will confess to Dr. Nguyen in the morning, and I will inform Ashton and Imogen. You've risked everything, your marriage, your reputation, the Prescott legacy." Sophia sank further. "I know. I accept whatever comes." In the quiet hours before dawn, Lila sat by Mari's bedside in the Roth family home at Willow Creek. Mari's eyes fluttered open, the aftereffects of the sedative still muddling her mind. She blinked, focusing on Lila's gentle face. "What happened?"
Mari Roth.
Lila squeezed her hand. "You were drugged at the manor." they gave you a heavy sedative. She paused, voice cracking. I saved you. Mari's brow furrowed. Sophia? Lila nodded. She slipped something into your cider.
I saw it.
I followed you back here. I called Dr. Nguyen. Tears welled in Mari's eyes. Why, Lila? Lila swallowed. You once saved my mother's life. You don't remember. I was 8 when she almost bled out during surgery. You donated blood, without question. I never forgot. I owe you. Mari shook her head, overwhelmed by gratitude. I don't know what to say. Lila brushed a tear from Mari's cheek. Just rest. I'll be here. In the days that followed, the fallout at Prescott Manor was swift and irrevocable. Sophia Prescott's confession sent shockwaves through the family. Gwendolyn Prescott, furious and heartbroken, demanded her daughter-in-law's removal from all charitable boards and instituted a strict banishment from family events until she could prove true remorse. Ashton Vale, horrified by the news, rushed to Willow Creek to check on Mari. He found his wife recovering, wrapped in blankets, eyes still misty, but stronger in spirit. He knelt beside her, guilt etched on his face. Mari, I'm so sorry.
I
should have been there. Mari reached for his hand. You're here now. That's what matters. At the manor, Lila's quiet heroism was quietly acknowledged by Gwendolyn, who, though still angered, recognized that Lila's loyalty and courage had preserved the family's honor. Sophia, meanwhile, faced legal consequences for her actions, a formal apology in the local press, and the disapproval of a community that once revered her. By the first week of January, a fragile peace settled over Salem Hills. Mari, wrapped in the care of her mother Imogen and the steadfast support of Ashton and Lila, found herself reflecting on the nightmarish turn of events. The manor's halls seemed emptier without Sophia's poised figure. The holiday decorations, once a beacon of warmth, now felt like reminders of ambition unchecked. Yet Mari understood that the Prescott legacy, like any family, was not defined by perfection, but by the capacity to overcome betrayal. In Lila, she had discovered a true ally. In Ashton, the power of renewed devotion. In herself, a resilience that no dose of evil sedative could extinguish. And as the first snowflakes of mid-January dusted the evergreen branches outside Willow Creek, Mari felt something she had not dared hope for in months. Real hope. Not just for an heir to the Prescott name, but for a future built on trust, forgiveness, and the knowledge that, even within a grand manor's gilded walls, true family ties are forged in acts of courage and compassion far more than in titles or legacies. The Prescott Manor's grand banqueting hall gleamed under a constellation of crystal chandeliers on the longest night of the year. Evergreen garlands, studded with frosted pine cones and scarlet berries, draped the balconies, while the scent of roasting chestnuts and spiced cider permeated the lofty space. Guests in velvet and silk murmured among themselves, their breath visible in the chill that seeped through the ancient stone walls. The air crackled with anticipation. Tonight, Gwendolyn Prescott would make an announcement that would echo through the family for generations to come. Mari Roth stood near the massive marble fireplace, her back pressed to its warming glow. At 28, she was no stranger to high society functions, yet tonight every gaze upon her felt like a loaded appraisal. She wore a deep emerald gown that swept the floor, its simple lines offset by a single strand of pearls, her mother's parting gift. Mari's pulse fluttered as she adjusted the delicate shawl around her shoulders. Across the room, her husband Ashton Vale whispered reassurances, but his words were as pale and distant as the winter moon outside. Seated at the head table, atop a raised dais, Gwendolyn Prescott surveyed her assembled relatives and valued community leaders with steely composure. Her silver hair was swept into an elegant chignon, and her midnight blue velvet gown glowed like a jewel. By her side sat Sophia Prescott, ethereal in pale gold, and on the other end Ophelia Feebrooks, whose simple ivory dress contrasted sharply with the manor's opulence. Fee's rosy cheeks and bright eyes hinted at a secret she carried close, a secret that would redefine the Prescott lineage. When the harpist's final note faded, an expectant hush settled over the hall. Gwendolyn rose, lifting a crystal chalice to her lips before setting it down with measured grace. Her cool gaze swept the crowd. "My dear family and friends," she began, voice resonant, "this year has been one of trials and revelations. We have weathered misfortune, confronted betrayal, and tested the bonds that bind us. Yet through it all, our commitment to the Prescott legacy has remained unshaken." As murmurs rippled through the guests, Mari's heart thudded in her chest. She exchanged a tense glance with Ashton and Lila Prescott, who sat close. Sophia's composed mask was in place, but Mari caught a flicker of apprehension in her sister-in-law's eyes. Gwendolyn paused, an orchestrated silence pregnant with meaning. Then she continued, softer now, warmth in her tone. "But tonight, we also gather to celebrate renewal, to look forward with hope. Our family has long upheld the precious gift of heirship, ensuring our estate, our vineyard, and our charitable endeavors endure in capable hands." A single tendril of Mari's hair fell across her brow. She brushed it away, bracing herself. "Ophelia Brooks," Gwendolyn declared, turning her attention to the young stylist, "has given us the most extraordinary news." She gestured to Fee with pride shining in her sapphire eyes. "Fee is carrying the first Prescott grandson in 3 generations." A collective gasp rippled through the hall. Mari's breath caught. She gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles blanched. Fee rose slowly, placing a hand over her abdomen, a serene smile illuminating her face. Champagne glasses tinkled as Gwendolyn raised her chalice again. "To our heir," she toasted, voice thick with emotion. "May his life honor the Prescott name." Glasses met in a crystalline chorus. Applause swelled. Mari felt the world tilt. The chatter around her blurred into an indecipherable hum, like leaves rustling in a storm. She remained rooted, mind a whirl of disbelief and agony. The heir belonged to Fee, the mistress who had so secretly captivated Ashton, and whom Gwendolyn now embraced as the future matriarch's own conduit for lineage. Ashton's hand closed around hers, warm and insistent. "Mari," he whispered, voice low. "I." She shook her head, a single tear trailing down her cheek. The glimmering faces of family and friends, all buoyed by excitement, became a shimmering wall between her and the life she had imagined. The place she had fought so hard to earn, the heart she had laid bare in silent clinic appointments and harvest duties, none of it mattered. To Gwendolyn, Mari had been valuable only as a vessel for potential heirs. Now that the true heir had been revealed, Mari's role was obsolete. Mari rose abruptly, the scrape of her chair echoing like a gunshot. Conversations hushed as dozens of gazes turned her way. Sophia's lips parted in shock. Lila's hand flew to her mouth. Gwendolyn's eyes narrowed, surprise giving way to disapproval. Mari lifted her chin, summoning every ounce of composure. She addressed the entire assembly. "Thank you for sharing this joyous news, Lady Prescott." Her voice, though trembling, carried clearly. "It's a blessing that will shape the future of this family." She let her words hang, then turned her gaze to Gwendolyn. "For 3 years, I have dedicated myself to this family, lending whatever I could, my time, my efforts, my very hope for a child. Yet I have come to understand that my value here was conditional, measured solely by my ability to produce the Prescott heir." A ripple of discomfort passed through the audience. Mari's words cut through the festive atmosphere like a winter gale. Gwendolyn remained seated, regal and still. Fury and confusion warred behind her mask of control. Mari continued, voice steadier now. "I see that your favor belongs to Ophelia, whose child will carry on the Prescott name. That decision is yours to make. But I cannot linger in a home where my worth is denied the moment I fell short of your expectations." She turned to Ashton. His face was ashen, eyes filled with remorse. Mari pressed her hand to his cheek. Ashton, I came to this family believing in our partnership, in the promise we made to each other. I believed we were equals, united in hope. But tonight, I know that neither I nor our vows matter as much as bloodlines. She stepped back. I choose to leave. I will not stay where I am valued only for what I can give, and discarded for what I cannot. A stunned silence engulfed the hall. Mari slipped past her seat, past Sophia's stunned gaze and Fee's soft gasp, down the lantern-lit aisle. Ashton called after her, voice breaking, "Mari, wait." But she did not wait. She moved with graceful resolution, her emerald gown swirling in the candlelight, each step a declaration of self-worth. At the threshold of the great doors, she paused, hand on the carved wood, her reflection cast back in the frosted glass. She inhaled, filling her lungs with cold air and newfound freedom. Behind her, Ashton hesitated a moment, torn between his mother's legacy and the woman he loved. Then he remained seated, crushed by guilt, as the doors closed softly on Mari Roth.
Outside.
Snow began to fall, gentle flakes drifting down to cloak the manor in pristine white. Mari stood on the stone steps, tears glistening on her lashes. The line between her past life and the unknown stretched wide before her. But for the first time, she felt the exhilarating clarity of choice, to define her own worth, to chart her own course. And so, beneath the winter sky, Mari Roth took her first steps away from the Prescott legacy, step by step, toward a future of her own making, guided by hope rather than obligation, and by love rather than lineage. Mari Roth stepped into her childhood home's warm foyer, the door whispering shut behind her like a gentle finality. The soft glow of Imogen Roth's porch lamp cast muted reflections on the polished hardwood floor as Mari removed her coat and tucked her wedding band into her purse. Tomorrow, she would sign the petition to dissolve her marriage to Ashton Vale. The thought settled in her chest with a sharp, clean edge, relief laced with grief. Imogen appeared in the hallway doorway, eyes wide with unspoken questions. Mari offered a small, steadying smile. "I'm filing," she said simply. Imogen's breath caught. She reached forward, pulling Mari into a gentle embrace. "Of course, sweetheart, whatever you need." That night, Mari lay in the guest room, the mattress unfamiliar but forgiving. Outside, December wind rattled the gutters. While she listened to Imogen's soft breathing through the thin wall, memories flickered. Their Vermont wedding, Ashton's bright eyes when he spoke of starting a family, Mari's hope blossoming like spring bulbs. And then the years of silence, of Dr. Nguyen's measured reassurances in hushed exam rooms, of Gwendolyn Prescott's crushing announcement at the winter solstice banquet. Mari closed her eyes, willing herself to rest. Morning light found them at Caldwell and Bryce Family Law. In Diane Caldwell's wood-paneled office, Mari and Imogen sat across from the attorney's polished desk. Diane, with her no-nonsense bob and sharp reading glasses, laid out the divorce process. No-fault filing, asset division, spousal support parameters. They reviewed the condo deed, retirement accounts, joint checking locked in escrow. Mari signed the petition, her signature crisp, unwavering, even as her pulse fluttered. When Diane slid the finalized papers across the veneer, Mari felt the weight lift and shift, as if the air in her lungs had room to expand for the first time in months. Meanwhile, Ashton Vale found himself in a sterile examination room at Crestview Medical Center. He had agreed, reluctantly, to the follow-up semen analysis Mari demanded, hoping for a sliver of good news. The nurse's gentle request to wait for Dr. Brooks lingered in the antiseptic air. When the specialist arrived, folder in hand, his expression was kind but somber. "Ashton, I'm sorry to confirm complete azoospermia. There are no viable sperm in your sample. Natural conception won't be possible." The words struck like hail on glass. Ashton's chest tightened in disbelief. He blinked until Dr. Brooks continued. "We can explore hormone therapies or donor options, but you should understand the reality now." He left the clinic in a blur of cold air and regret. He sat in his car, rain pelting the windshield, grappling with the truth that every time he blamed Mari, he was blaming himself. He realized the cruelty in holding her to an expectation he would never meet. That night, he returned unannounced to Prescott Manor, rainwater dripping from his collar. The butler discreetly guided him past the Christmas wreaths into Gwendolyn Prescott's study, where her brother and Gwendolyn herself stood in hushed conversation. "Ashton," she said, surprise and concern mingling in her cool tone. "You're home early." He ignored the formality. "I have your results," he said, thrusting the folder toward her.
I'm infertile.
Gwendolyn froze, then closed her eyes as if steeling herself. "That can't be," she whispered, voice trembling.
No.
His voice cracked with years of bottled emotion.
Elite.
"I blamed Mari because I was too ashamed to face the truth. I watched her shoulder every duty, thinking she'd bear the burden. And through it all, I pursued contracts and deals, telling myself that security meant love. But I neglected her, and now it's too late." The confession spilled out in ragged gasps. He collapsed onto a nearby settee, face in his hands. Gwendolyn's brother placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, eyes wide, while Gwendolyn paced, guilt and fury warring in her expression. "You loved her," she said finally, voice soft. "You must find her and tell her the truth." Back in Willow Creek, Mari quietly finalized the settlement with Diane Caldwell. Each initial on the dotted lines severed a tie: Ashton's share of the condo, the spousal support schedule, the title to half their joint investment properties. Imogen sat beside her, squeezing her hand. Mari felt neither triumph nor sorrow, only a clear-eyed relief. She stepped out into the winter afternoon, the crisp air filling her lungs as if she'd held her breath for too long. That evening, Mari returned to the cozy warmth of Imogen's home, finding a bouquet of evergreen sprigs and red berries waiting on the entry table, a gesture of solidarity. She sank onto the living room sofa, wrapping herself in one of Imogen's knitted blankets. Her phone buzzed, a single text from Gwendolyn Prescott. Ashton called.
I'm so sorry.
He told all. "Please call me when you're ready." Mari stared at the message, her thumb hovering. She didn't feel ready, and maybe she never would. Still, the final curtain of this chapter had closed. She pressed delete and settled back against the cushions. Across town, Ashton climbed the slippery gravel drive to Mari's familiar cottage. He carried nothing but a single white rose and the folder of medical results. Rain misted the air as he knocked, heart hammering. Imogen opened the door, eyes glistening but resolute. She stepped aside wordlessly. Mari appeared in the doorway, swathed in a shawl. Her cheeks were flushed from the chill, eyes shining with quiet strength. "Ashton," she said, voice even. He held out the flower.
Mari?
"I needed you to know the truth." His voice shook as he handed her the folder.
I'm infertile.
"I blamed you to protect myself. I was wrong." Tears welled in Mari's eyes. She remained still, absorbing the confession. "You let me believe it was my fault," she said softly. "You let me suffer." He knelt before her, head bowed. "I'm so sorry." Mari looked at the rose, then at the rain-streaked window. She thought of the years of sterile clinic rooms, the holiday banquets, Gwendolyn's favor toward Fee. "I needed your partnership," she said, stepping back. "You weren't there when I needed you most. I needed you to stand with me." He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I know. And I will always regret that I wasn't enough." Mari turned away, crossing into the living room. Ashton watched, the rose fumbling in his hand. The sound of her footsteps receded, each step a reminder of choice and consequence. He sank onto the sofa where he had once shared laughter and plans, and stared at the empty spot beside him. Outside, the rain softened to a whisper, carrying the promise of dawn. Inside, Ashton sat alone, confronting the collapse of his ambitions, his marriage, and his illusions. In that silent cottage, he realized that some failures could not be repaired, and some doors once closed did not reopen. He whispered into the dark, "I'm sorry, Mari," over and over until the walls absorbed his lament. leaving only the soft patter of rain as testament to a love lost and a man undone. Mari Roth awoke to the gentle trill of songbirds and soft sunlight filtering through gauzy curtains. The Willow Creek cottage, once an unfamiliar retreat, had become a sanctuary. She slid from the warmth of her quilts, padded across honeyed pine floors, and set a kettle on the stove. Each morning began with ritual, fresh water poured over chamomile, the tea steeping while she sliced sourdough on a well-worn cutting board. 2 mugs, one for her, one for the empty chair, spoke of what had been and what lay ahead. By mid-morning, Mari was at the helm of a new chapter. She drove the narrow dirt road toward Silverleaf Vineyards, where Clara Jensen greeted her with an enthusiastic wave. Clara's eco-friendly winery was a far cry from corporate marketing firms. Recycled glass bottles, solar-powered presses, and pastel labels celebrating grape varietals and wildflower meadows. Mari threw herself into her role as marketing director, collaborating on tastings that paired rose with local goat cheese, crafting social media posts that highlighted sustainable farming, and organizing Harvest and Harmony weekends where visitors gathered grapes under shaded trellises while local musicians played lullabies for the vines. Each successful event reinforced Mari's conviction that purpose came from community and creativity, not from the hollow pursuit of lineage. Lunch hours found Mari at the Harvest Circle Cooperative, a collective of growers, bakers, artisans, and volunteer coordinators who repurpose surplus produce for food banks. She arrived with a tote of event flyers, hot pink cardstock announcing upcoming wine and wildflower tours and soup and story evenings. She greeted old friends and new faces alike. Jasper, the beekeeper whose honey-infused shortbread sold out in minutes. Evelyn, the retired schoolteacher knitting hats for infants born at the local clinic. And Ramon, the former steelworker turned ceramicist, his weathered hands molding bowls to cradle creamy polenta at the next fundraiser. In the circle's high-ceilinged barn, Mari found camaraderie that transcended social status. She pitched in, sorting apples, labeling jars of pickled carrots, and directing volunteers to assemble food packages. Laughter and purposeful chatter wove through the space, a tapestry of mutual respect that Mari treasured more than any crystal chandelier ever gleamed. Afternoons often brought garden consultations at Mari's own small plot behind the cottage. She coached Imogen, her mother, in starting heirloom tomatoes from seed. Together they tilled the raised beds, testing soil acidity with homemade vinegar and baking soda solutions, applying compost they'd gathered from friends. When a creeping army of snails threatened the lettuce, Mari devised a beer trap perimeter. When basil seedlings wilted under an unexpected heat wave, Imogen rigged a traveling shade screen from bamboo poles and repurposed bedsheets. Each tiny success, whether a sprig of basil unfurling or a handful of bright green beans, fed Mari's spirit, a reminder that growth took patience and care. Evenings were for neighborly potlucks. The back porch, strung with lanterns, glowed with the warmth of shared meals. Mari set her table with wildflower prints and mismatched china she'd collected from estate sales, centerpieces of grocery store daisies, and sprigs of rosemary from her garden. Guests arrived with dishes wrapped in cloth, polenta casserole, foraged mushroom ragu, marinated beets, and jars of pickled cucumbers that burst with tang. Laughter spiraled into the night as neighbors swayed to the ukulele rhythms of young Mateo, who lived in the old mill by the creek. Mari lounged on a cedar bench, wineglass in hand, her laughter free at last from the tensions that had once pulled at her heart. Back at Prescott Manor, life had shifted beneath Gwendolyn Prescott's grand roof. The matriarch, once imperious and unwavering, aged subtly under the weight of remorse. She rose at dawn, marginally earlier than before, to trace her steps through the grounds with a cup of chamomile tea rather than the domineering clatter of ledger audits. Along the perimeters of her beloved vineyards, she paused among budding vines, recalling how Mari had once breezed through these rows with practiced kindness, teaching seasonal workers to prune and stake with gentle expertise. Gwendolyn now pruned her own stubborn rose bushes, each careful snip a whispered apology for the wounds she had inflicted. Gwendolyn's public calendar grew unexpectedly crowded with community engagements, women's empowerment panels, sustainable agriculture forums, and interfaith dinners. At the Salem Hills Women's Outreach Gala, she delivered a speech on resilience and redemption, her voice mellowed by genuine contrition. She had insisted that Mari speak alongside her, but Mari had declined, choosing the comfort of Willow Creek over the marble podium. Still, Gwendolyn honored Mari's contributions. At the gala's reception, Gwendolyn arranged for a plaque in the Harvest Circle's nameplate garden, acknowledging Mari's work to feed hundreds of families that winter. The tribute, subtle yet meaningful, stood in the manor's courtyard. In gratitude to Mari Roth, whose dedication nourished our community and our souls. Sophia Prescott's journey from envy to atonement unfolded in parallel. Once the poised debutante of Brookstone society, Sophia found herself stripped of trappings, her resume of charitable board positions suspended, her invitations to luncheons rescinded, her social media pages scrubbed of event highlights. She spent winter months in restorative jury service, quietly chopping carrots at Mari's Harvest Circle, stacking bread loaves for senior lunches, and counseling youth in a local mentoring program. Through her tears in chilly cider storage rooms, she delivered apology after apology to Mari and the community. Yet each act of service chipped away at her self-doubt. She discovered satisfaction not in accolades, but in tangible impact. When a struggling mother cupped warm soup in her trembling hands, Sophia felt a sense of belonging stronger than any society page mention. By spring, sisters and neighbors alike greeted her with genuine smiles, not pity, recognizing the courage required to rebuild character from the ruins of jealousy. Lila Prescott's emergence as a community leader deepened.
The shy,
gentle teacher of years past, who had once blended into the patterned upholstery of Prescott Manor's drawing rooms, now stood at the vanguard of innovative public events. Her company, Root and Bloom, blossomed into the region's go-to event planner for sustainable fairs. She synchronized lavender fields with local wineries for lavender and libations evenings, coordinated sunrise yoga and muffins sessions in dewy meadows, and designed a full moon feast series where people gathered for communal bowls of stew under an open sky. She built her team from interns at the nearby community college, mentoring them in vendor negotiations, volunteer coordination, and social media storytelling. Under her guidance, Root and Bloom's first major conference, Growing Together, Small Farms and Big Hearts, hosted keynote speakers on organic farming alongside local food truck vendors. Lila's warm confidence at the podium earned applause and media coverage, her name printed not as the third daughter-in-law, but as Lila Prescott, visionary event curator. Throughout these transformations, Mari's life in Willow Creek flourished. She signed the final tax paperwork trading her condo in the city for a half share in her cottage. Her attorney's advice proved sound. She stashed the last of her spousal support checks into a separate business account, a fund earmarked for future Root and Bloom expansions. Each deposit rang with independence. She attended the final settlement meeting alone, signing under petitioner, and leaving behind the identity she had once tied to Respondent Vale. In late May, Gwendolyn dared to invite Mari back to Prescott Manor for a small garden luncheon. Mari arrived with Imogen and Lila, the air heavy with spring blossoms. The estate's hedges, once supremely trimmed, now showed signs of organic wildflower patches, an idea Mari had proposed long ago. Over plates of lemon-thyme chicken and roast asparagus, the women toasted new beginnings. Gwendolyn presented a gift, a leather-bound journal embossed with a single vine motif. "For your continued chapters," she said, voice unguarded. Mari accepted, heart filled with cautious optimism. She traced the embossed vine with her fingertip.
"Thank you," she said.
Outside, Fee Brooks, her once estranged friend, arrived cradling baby Benjamin, the first Prescott grandson. Fee glided across the lawn, the infant cooing. Mari knelt, accepting the child into her arms. His bright eyes blinked curiously up at her. Mari's heart swelled with genuine joy, joy that was not for her, but for the community and love that had nurtured them all. She bounced Benjamin gently, laughter bubbling through the warm air. As the luncheon wound down, the group strolled through rows of lavender and rosemary. Gwendolyn paused by a budding rosebush Mari had once tended. She turned to Mari, breath-catching. "You have given this family and this land a new life." "Thank you." Mari offered a serene smile. "We all did." Across the hedge, Ashton Vale appeared, holding a canvas tote spilling with wildflowers and jars of homemade strawberry jam. He had traveled from his corporate office, drawn by an invitation to witness Mari's speech at the Salem Hills Women's Outreach Gala and by a hope to reconnect. Mari's gaze met his. In her eyes, he read forgiveness tempered by strength. That evening, Ashton and Mari walked along a gravel path, twilight turning sky to rose and lavender. He reached for her hand, rose petals brushing her fingertips. "I brought this," he said, pressing a single bloom to her palm. Mari lifted his hand to her cheek. "It's beautiful." "Ashton," she began, voice soft but firm. He nodded. "I know. I've learned that legacy isn't built on heirs or estates. It's built on kindness, community, and the courage to change." He took a deep breath. "If you'll have me, not as your husband but as your partner, I want to help cultivate whatever legacy you choose." Mari's eyes glistened in the last light. She placed the rose in her hair and slid her hand around his arm. "Let's plant something together." Under that awakening sky, they walked home side by side, roots entwining into a new promise of shared purpose. Behind them, Prescott Manor's windows glowed with warm lamplight, reflecting a family transformed. Sophia returned to her service projects with renewed humility. Lila's root and bloom thrived. Fee raised her son with open-hearted joy, and Gwendolyn, once the fierce matriarch, found solace in gratitude rather than power. And in Willow Creek, where the creek's laughter met the vine rose, Mari and her community tended the seeds of redemption. They had learned that true legacy springs from soil enriched by forgiveness, love, and the simple acts that bind people's lives together. In that living tapestry, each of them discovered that the richest heirship is not of bloodline, but of hearts sown in compassion and harvested in hope. And that brings us to the end of today's story on TrueStory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.